As we've seen, this unit is highly structured. We're going to start with the theory of consumer behaviour, which enables us to derive a demand curve. And then we're going to look at cost curves and cost under competitive conditions to derive a supply curve. Then we're going to put them together and we can talk about a competitive market and the equilibrium determination of price and quantity. And from there we can go on to say, well, hang on a sec, perfectly competitive markets can break down, or they can fail in various ways, or markets might not be competitive at all. That is, that they can suffer from market power, and also they can generate income inequality. So before we go through all of that, we need to start with the first step first, obviously, and that first step is to think about the theory, is to think about consumer choice, because we want to talk about demand for a product. So what we're going to look at here is a very particular theory of rational choice, which is if you like, one of the cornerstones of the dominant neoclassical school of thought in economics. This theory of choice says that people will act rationally in their decision making, and in particular what we mean by that is that people seek to choose that which they most prefer given the constraints they face on their ability to obtain their preferences. So that sounds pretty straightforward and simple and makes a lot of sense. We should bear in mind, however, that the theory is going to push this idea of how choices are made to its limits. So it's going to come up with an uber-rational theory of consumers, which doesn't perfectly accord with real flesh and blood people who, bump around in life, walking off cliffs and getting run over by cars and so on, and making decisions which aren't necessarily in their best interests all the time. But nonetheless, we're going to persist with this theory because it's not entirely useless, and so we're going to start with looking at the constraints faced by a decision maker, a consumer, and then we'll look at their preferences, how we can think about their preferences, how we can model their preferences, and then we'll put them together and we'll muck around with our model a little bit so we can derive a demand curve.